5.5 million people. That's Norway, smaller than the population of Singapore, smaller than the city of London. Yet in 2026, this thin strip of fjords and frozen rock holds one of the most strategically critical pieces of real estate on the planet, a stretch of ocean and ice that every war planner in Moscow, Washington, and Brussels obsesses over. On the map, Norway barely registers, a vertical sliver clinging to the edge of Europe. But go north, past the fishing villages, past the snow line, past the last road that trucks dare to travel in winter. Go north until the sea turns black and the sky never quite gets dark in summer, never quite gets light in winter. Up there, Norway is not small. Norway is everything. And in 2026, Norway is spending, planning, and partnering like a country that knows exactly what's coming and refuses to be a speed bump when it arrives. So, how insanely powerful is Norway's military in 2026? Let's find out. Start where all serious defense conversations start. The money, because numbers tell you what a country actually believes, not what it says in speeches. Norway's 2026 defense budget is 112 billion Norwegian kroner for national defense alone. Add support for Ukraine, and the total defense package reaches approximately 180 billion Norwegian kroner. That puts Norway at 3.4% of GDP. 3.4%. At a time when NATO countries spent years arguing about reaching 2%, Norway is well past that and accelerating. But here is the part that changes the conversation entirely. In June 2025, the Norwegian government made an official commitment, not a campaign promise, not a vague target, to reach 5% of GDP on defense-related expenditure, 3.5% on core military, 1.5% on defense-related investments, 5% total. For a country with Norway's wealth, sovereign oil fund, modern infrastructure, one of the highest living standards on earth, choosing to redirect that share of its national income into defense is a statement, a loud one. Keep that 5% number in your head. It is your first anchor. Before we count missiles and submarines, we need to understand why Norway specifically matters so much. Because the answer isn't obvious until it hits you like cold water. Norway shares a land border with Russia, a real, physical border in the northeast, where Norwegian territory sits directly alongside the Kola Peninsula, home to Russia's northern fleet and the world's largest concentration of nuclear ballistic missile submarines. Let that settle for a moment. Now go west, past Iceland, past the stretch of ocean between Greenland and the United Kingdom. This is the GIUK gap, the single choke point any Russian submarine must pass through to reach the Atlantic shipping lanes, the sea routes connecting North America and Europe, the lifelines of transatlantic reinforcement. If those routes are cut in a war, Europe isolates faster than any land army can compensate for. Norway sits directly beside that choke point. Norway is the alarm system, the surveillance net, and the first line of resistance on that gateway. NATO planners don't just like Norway, they depend on Norway. Because if Norway goes dark in the opening hours of a conflict, the entire northern flank of the alliance starts bleeding. That is the weight on 5.5 million people's shoulders. Air power first, because in a modern conflict, whoever owns the sky shapes every battle below it. Norway flies 52 F-35A Lightning II stealth fighters, the full fleet, delivered. Norway was the first partner nation in the entire F-35 program to complete its full order, ahead of schedule. Now understand what an F-35A actually does in Norway's hands. It isn't just fast. It isn't just stealthy. It is above everything, a flying intelligence machine. Its sensors fuse radar returns, infrared signatures, electronic emissions, and communications data into a single picture the pilot sees inside their helmet in real time. The jet doesn't just fight, it understands the battlefield before the enemy knows it's there. And Norway paired those jets with something it built itself, the Joint Strike Missile, JSM, a precision anti-ship and land attack weapon designed to sit inside the F-35's stealth weapons bay. No external pylons, no radar penalty. The missile drops below radar coverage, navigates through terrain, and hunts its target from well over the horizon. You never see the plane, you never see the missile, you hear the result. The F-35 plus JSM combination turns the Norwegian Sea and the Barents approaches into a no-go zone. These aren't fair weather pilots either. Norwegian F-35 crews train in Arctic crosswinds that throw a landing sideways, in visibility so low that instruments are the only truth, in temperatures that make every system on an aircraft work harder. They train in conditions where the weather itself is a fourth enemy. If you can land a stealth fighter on an Arctic runway in a gusting mountain crosswind, parallel parking anywhere else becomes a joke. Below those aircraft sites Norway's air defense backbone, NASAMS, the Norwegian Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System. Norway invented it. A country of 5.5 million people designed a ground-based air defense architecture so effective that allies have been lining up to buy it for decades. Ukraine's defenders know its name very well. NASAMS has been earning its reputation in real combat, not war games. Norway is now acquiring additional NASAMS components, dispersed, hardened, and mobile enough to survive the drone-saturated battlefields that Ukraine taught every serious defense planner to prepare for. And coming above that, Norway's long-term plan calls for a new long-range air defense layer, ballistic missile, and cruise threat coverage at altitudes NASAMS doesn't reach. Every altitude covered, no free corridors. Norway is primarily a maritime and air power nation, but wars are still decided on ground that people can walk on and hold. In the far north, Brigade Nord, the Finnmark Brigade, is established and operational, a full maneuver brigade positioned as close to Russia's border as Norway can physically put it, not symbolism. If you cross into Norwegian territory, you meet trained soldiers with heavy weapons in minutes. A third brigade in the south is planned, deepening Norway's defensive backbone. Those brigades are also getting new armor. Norway has ordered 54 Leopard 2 A8 NOR main battle tanks, the most advanced production variant of the Leopard 2 family. First deliveries arriving in April 2026, right now. Built for Arctic conditions. Digital command integration. Sensors that work where other optics go dark. These tanks were spec'd for Norway, ordered for Norway, and they anchor the mechanized force the way a spine anchors a body. Now add fires. Norway already operates K-9 self-propelled howitzers, but the decisive new capability is the K-239 Chunmoo multiple launch rocket system from South Korea. Under a contract worth approximately $2 billion, 16 launchers with a deep magazine of precision guided rockets. Chunmoo delivers standoff range that shapes a battlefield far ahead of any infantry contact. Position those launchers at Bardufoss and along northern road networks, and you cover every approach corridor with precision fires that reach deep, further than the enemy can see you coming. Here's what most people miss about Norway's military power. The armed forces are only part of the story. Norway has declared 2026 the National Total Defense Year. Total defense is the concept that deterrence doesn't begin at the fence of a military base. It begins at the power grid, at the fuel depot, at the municipality keeping water flowing when communications go dark. The Home Guard, expanding toward tens of thousands of trained reservists, is the living tissue of this. These are people who know their local terrain better than any foreign force ever could. They know which road floods in spring, which mountain pass closes in October, which valley channels radio signals in strange ways. In 2026, Norway is integrating civilian infrastructure, supply chains, communications, transport corridors, energy systems directly into military readiness planning. The entire country rehearses crisis management. Companies rehearse supply continuity. Civil servants rehearse protocols with military commands. You don't just invade a country here. You invade a society that prepared for exactly this. Every fjord is defended. Every town has a plan. Norway doesn't just have an army. Norway is the obstacle. And now we arrive at the part of this story that should genuinely alarm anyone looking at the northern map from a hostile direction. Norway is not alone. On January 1st, 2026, Norway assumed the chairmanship of NORDEFCO, the Nordic Defense Cooperation. 5 nations: Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. Norway's stated goal for 2026: make the Nordic region the most integrated defense zone in Europe. Not coordinate, integrate, operationally, logistically, down to soldiers from 5 countries crossing each other's borders and fighting alongside each other before the briefing ends. Look at what those 5 nations bring together. Norway, Arctic maritime expertise, the GIUK gatekeeping mission, 52 stealth fighters armed with JSM, 6 silent submarines on the way. Leopard 2 A8 tanks arriving now. Defense spending at 3.4%, heading toward 5. Finland, the largest and most lethal artillery force in all of Western Europe. Over 700 active artillery pieces. A reserve of 900,000 trained personnel. 900,000. In a country of 5.5 million people. Their F-35As are now arriving at Lapland Air Wing. Finland's entire national identity is territorial defense. They have been mentally prepared for this scenario for generations. Sweden, industrial power and electronic warfare. The new Gripen E-fighter, equipped with Meteor long-range air-to-air missiles and electronic warfare capabilities that even F-35 pilots acknowledge with respect. The Archer self-propelled artillery system, world famous now. Defense spending accelerating toward 3.5%. Denmark, sea flanks, Baltic access, and a $9 billion air defense deal, the largest in Danish history. Building a multi-layered air defense architecture that connects directly into Norway's and Sweden's systems, and connecting all of it in 2026. The Nordic air power concept. Over 250 advanced fighters, Norwegian and Finnish F-35As, Swedish Gripen S, Danish jets, operating under a coordinated air architecture for the first time. 250 advanced fighters acting as a unified force. That is not a regional air patrol. That is serious continental air power. On the ground, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Lithuania are jointly acquiring the CV-90 Mark IV infantry fighting vehicle under a shared procurement program. The same vehicle, the same doctrine, the same spare parts. Nordic soldiers fighting side by side with identical equipment, and NATO has now unified all of this under a single command. Joint Force Command. Norfolk now covers both the North Atlantic and the Arctic, with Denmark, Finland, and Sweden explicitly included under a one Arctic approach. An adversary facing Norway is not facing a small country. It is facing the tip of a wall that stretches across an entire region, backed by one of the most powerful military alliances in history. Let me put you in two very different positions. You are a Northern Fleet operations planner in Severomorsk. A gray morning, a nautical chart on the table. Your task? Find a route west. You start drawing rings. P8, Poseidon patrol arcs. They're airborne right now. F-35 sensor bubbles. You can't see them on radar, but the intelligence reports say they're there. JSM range bands. They cover the corridor you thought was your gap. Nansen frigate patrol areas. They know every sound echo in that water. Type 2, 1, 2, CD submarine probability zones. First delivery is 2029, but Ula-class boats are still active, and you don't know where a single one of them is tonight. Every circle overlaps. Every corridor has a sensor watching it. Beyond the GIUK gap, a Royal Navy submarine is already on station. Beyond that, an American Virginia class sits in water your sonar cannot penetrate in these thermal conditions. You look at the chart for a long time. There is no clean route. Norway and its partners made absolutely sure of that. Now, you are a Norwegian F-35 pilot. It is 3 a.m. The sun doesn't exist up here in this season. Your helmet comes alive the moment you taxi. A fused tactical picture builds in seconds. You are not flying alone. A Finnish F-35 is holding 20 minutes back. A Swedish Gripen covers the southern corridor. 2 Poseidons orbit at altitude, feeding data downward. A Chunmoo battery at Bardufoss has its firing solutions loaded and ready. The play is already written. Your job is to execute it cleanly. You push north into the dark. The JSMs are patient in the weapons bay. Your presence alone, right now, is enough to change the calculation on the other side of this equation. You think briefly about what deterrence actually is. It isn't firing. It's being present and undeniable enough that the other side decides not to make you fire. You push the throttle forward. Norway's long-term defense plan covers 2025 to 2036 and commits approximately 600 billion Norwegian kroner to locking in next-generation capability and fixing every remaining gap. New frigates in the late 2030s. 6 Type 2, 1-2 CD submarines entering service through 2035. Long-range air defense fully deployed. 3rd Brigade operational. Chunmoo batteries standing up. Leopard 2 A8 crews training on tanks that just arrived. And every year, the Nordefco network tightens. Every year, 5 Nordic nations learn a little better how to fight together, move together, and endure together. So, how insanely powerful is Norway's military in 2026? Powerful in the right way, not the loudest voice in the room, not the biggest parade, not the most aggressive headline. Norway built the alarm system, loaded the missiles, dug in the brigades, parked the submarines in deep water, integrated its entire society into the deterrence architecture, and then invited 4 neighbors to link arms and do the same. 5.5 million people, 3.4% of GDP today, heading toward 5. 52 stealth fighters that hunt from the horizon, 6 submarines that no sensor reliably finds, 250 million NATO troops that Norway's tripwire would call forward if the alarm ever went off. Norway doesn't need to defeat Russia alone. Norway needs to make starting anything in the high north so complicated, so costly, and so unpredictable that no planner in any headquarters ever convinces themselves it's worth trying. Based on everything you just heard, that case is already closed. If you learned something today about why this quiet, wealthy Nordic nation is the most important lock on Europe's most dangerous door, hit subscribe. The Arctic story is still being written, and we are just getting started.